When I was a kid, all I wanted to do was take my sister's Nokia phone and play Snake. That's what I would literally do all day, every day. And then as I grew older, this obsession with tech just grew with me. I wanted big things. I wanted phones with sliding keyboards, cameras, big displays, all the fancy features, you name it. But getting a big phone just wasn't a priority in my house. My family would spend on important things, and they saw these things as secondary, as gimmicks, stuff you don't really need. So when I was finally old enough that my family deemed that okay, now I can have a phone, I got a pristine Nokia 1112. Their ideology was that you just need a device to get by. At that time, the major features you needed from a phone were the ability to call and text. Any phone that could provide those things at the least price was the ideal phone for someone like me. Now things are different. Now that I mess with tech for a living, I get my hands on the best of the best stuff. But still, I know that there are people out there like how I was. There are people who just want a phone with the basic features, just to get by. Maybe that's because of financial reasons, or maybe they aren't interested in big features, or whatever the reason is. Basically, I wanted to test if I were to get a phone like that now, would I be able to survive? And would I be able to get by? This is the Nokia one, the cheapest and the most easy to get phone from Nokia. As I mentioned, the basic features you needed back in like 2003 were calling and texting. But now, things are different. Now your phone is your social hub, your media player, your point and shoot. So I made a list of features that I think are the basic features that every smartphone should have. This includes your calling and texting, the ability to run social media apps, a camera, and finally good media playback. I use this phone, the Nokia one. This is the lowest of the low budget smartphone. It costs literally dirt cheap. So what are you getting in this phone? Is this phone able to perform all the functions as I mentioned? And what do you sacrifice? Let's find out. This phone has a modest MediaTek processor, 1GB of RAM and 8GB of storage. There's a 5 megapixel back cam and a 2 megapixel front cam. One thing that's interesting is that there's no fingerprint sensor. You can put a password or a PIN, but there's no sort of biometric security on this phone. It might be a problem, but since this is an ultra budget device, I don't really mind. It takes a few more seconds to put in a PIN, and I understand why they didn't put in a fingerprint sensor. So that was a small recap of the phone. Now let's see if this phone can perform all the tasks that I want. Let's start with calling and texting. Now for me, calling and texting doesn't just include your GSM SIM, but it also includes things like WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, Telegram, and any other sort of VoIP app. Since this project was all about saving money and compromising, whenever I could use a light version of any application, I did. So for Facebook Messenger, I used Messenger Lite, and if you are thinking about getting a low-end phone, I would recommend you do the same, because that will be much more easier for the processor. So all my calling and texting apps ran very well without any problems. The performance in this regard was pretty good. I didn't have a problem using these apps. The microphone on the phone is also fairly loud, so the native GSM calling was also really good. So all in all, in calling and texting, this phone passes. Now let's move on to social hub. This includes apps like Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, and Reddit. For Facebook, I used Facebook Lite, and the experience was good. I would even say that the experience was a bit smoother than some mid-range phones on the normal Facebook app. That's not a dig against mid-range phones, but it does show you how needlessly heavy and unoptimized the regular Facebook app is. The Facebook Lite app ran flawlessly. The Instagram app also ran well, but it did have some lag when scrolling and a lot of lag when processing. But for the most part, it was fine. The Reddit app I used, Boost for Reddit, ran surprisingly well. This app consumes and processes more information than Instagram, and yet it ran better than Instagram. Lastly, let's talk about Snapchat. I have a love-hate relationship with Snapchat. Well, it's mostly hate. If you have used Snapchat on an iPhone, then you will know the difference is night and day. The best of the best Android phones struggle with Snapchat, because the app is just not well made. It's not well optimized. It basically lags on every single phone. With this phone, it was no difference. I was fully expecting it to be a giant mess, and it was just that. So overall, I was able to use my regular social apps without any issues. Yes, there was some lag and it did take longer to open these apps, but all in all, it did get the job done. So I'm happy with that. Another thing that surprised me about this phone was the camera. I was expecting it to be utter garbage, but turns out it's actually pretty decent. For the price, it's actually not a bad camera at all. Lastly, let's talk about video playback and overall usability. I use the YouTube Go app. Apart from some slight lag, there wasn't really a problem. The display is only 480p, so the app can only play back up to 480p video. And it doesn't look the best, but it looks pretty decent. I mean, you would be crazy if you wanna watch a movie on this. But just for reading and getting information and watching videos you get on WhatsApp, for those things, it's not bad. I kept using the stock launcher because I want to keep things as light as possible, and I have to say the general usability is really good. Going through the UI isn't a pain, it's smooth, and apps like the dialer app, the messaging app, and even Chrome open fairly quickly. So let's recap. I use this phone for texting and calling, as a video hub, as a point and shoot, and as a social hub. I used all the apps that I think should work on all phones, and this phone didn't let me down. I was able to get by. Yes, everything took a bit more time, and yes, photos don't look as good as big phones, but there wasn't a hindrance. There wasn't a time where the phone couldn't perform the task. It just took a bit longer. Lastly, just for my own entertainment, I played PUBG, and it was just a nightmare. Phones like this are just not capable for huge tasks like that. Expecting PUBG Mobile to run well on this phone is like expecting Apple to make a $200 phone, or expecting Windows Phone to be the best seller of the year. It's just not gonna happen. You can play some arcade games, but nothing too intensive. As I mentioned before, I wanted to test if I could survive using a phone that was just offering the bare minimum features. And for the most part, this phone succeeded, and it gave me a good experience. So if you are a Cream or Uber driver who just wants a phone for navigation, or if you are a student who just needs a phone to get by, or if you don't want to spend too much on a phone, then you should check this phone out.